This is the first set of wheels I ever bought. This is my first $500, and this is the first wagon that I restored. Once I got that done, I realized that all buggies weren't the same.
Hi, I'm Chris Dallin with The Long Way Home. We understand that Eli Anderson and his buggy collection is the biggest in North America. He has a passion and an excitement for history. Let's go in and check it out on your Long Way Home. This is like a Surrey with fringe on top, right?
Yes, it is, and it's a four-seater, so you can haul 12 people in that, and it's one of the most popular ones we have. So it's usually in a Days of 47 parade. When I got it, it was in pieces. Parts of it were, in a milk crate. No instructions, no blueprints. There was a few pieces of the top left. The top irons were there, and then we brought it home, restored it, put it back together, built a new top, and upholstered the seats.
You've got so many cool things, everything from sleighs, anything that's horse-drawn. Is that your collection?
Horse or animal, usually pulled. It kind of started out when I was in second grade. We went on a field trip to Pioneer Village in Salt Lake City, and my mother was a room mother, and she went along on the trip, and we'd look at things at Pioneer Village, and she saw a parlor stove and said, that's just like the one we had, and an old pump organ. And I said, well, what happened to this stuff? And so I came home trying to find what had happened to all these old things, and it turned out most of them had been discarded over the riverbank, and they'd gotten rid of them over the years. So I started bringing home broken pieces of purple glass and pottery.
Tell us about this patent sun-proof paint.
That is a draying wagon. It was a wagon that was used near Chicago. I purchased it kind of over the phone, sight unseen. A friend was at an auction in Iowa, and he saw the wagon there, and he said, Eli, you really ought to buy this wagon. You don't have a wagon like that in your collection. And so I put a bid in over the phone. He bid it and bought it. After he bought the wagon, a fellow came up to him and said, where's the wagon going? And he said, it's going to Utah. And he says, Utah? The fellow that took the wagon to the auction came out here to find out what kind of home his wagon went to. I spent a year restoring that wagon.
Look at all of those. So these are a little bit bigger now, right?
Well, there's some small ones in here too, but there's some big ones. This is a mud wagon stagecoach. It used to run between Arco and Salmon, Idaho.
Really?
Uh-huh. And it was owned by Logan, Utah City from about 1921 until sometime in the 70s. I was at an auction in Wyoming, and they had a buyer on the East Coast. I had to mortgage my tractor and give them a good wagon for the farm to keep this piece of history here in the West. You can see Stage Company, the old writing on the side, and it's pretty darn neat. It's the mud wagon style. It was the kind they used here in the West. They're more rugged and durable. Mm-hmm. And the reason they got the nickname mud wagon is because of the rough terrain around here, and they were always covered with mud.
So I've seen this a lot, this big leather, what do you call this, trunk?
That's the boot.
The boot?
And that's where they'd put the luggage and things that the passengers had. There's also a rack on top that they would put trunks and baggage up there. And of course, when they were hauling gold, it went under the driver and the shotgun.
So when someone says, I call shotgun, that's where it comes from. Is you're going to ride passenger, right?
You're going to ride passenger next to the driver, and they carried a gun. There's such a variety of wagons in here. There's a pie delivery wagon. There's a bakery wagon. There's a laundry wagon. There's a lumber wagon. There's a contractor's sand and gravel wagon. There's a delivery wagon that would deliver fuel for the early automobiles.
So that's a little ironic, right? To have the wagon bring the oil and gas for the automobiles, right?
Well, the horse-drawn wagons were much more dependable than the early automobiles were, and they could haul a lot bigger load and pull a lot bigger load than they could do in those early automobiles.
This wagon with a suitable water tank and sprinkling device was used for wetting down the dust on public thoroughfares. It was also used to carry water for livestock. The tank on this wagon is built from clear cedar lumber. When the wood becomes wet, it expands and becomes very tight so the tank does not leak. So this is a horse ambulance.
This is a horse ambulance for horses. Probably the rarest one in the collection.
So this is the siren that let them know that you're coming.
That's the siren to clear the way so that they could get the horse off the street and get it emergency care.
So what kind of big boys you got to have to lift a horse in the back of this meat wagon is what I want to know.
Well, you know, if the horse couldn't get in on its own power, there's a place to put a rope. And then the team would walk ahead and drag the horse into the wagon. If it can get in on its own power, they'd lead it in and tie it up to that loop right there.
What's in here? Look at that, there's even a little doctor's case in there to handle all the ailments that a horse might have.
The sutures, everything you need's in there. There's, you know,
that's amazing.
tools to deal with the horse's teeth and a lot of old-time horse tools in there. Is that going to fit through your door?
So we're here. The UPS guy shows up, and surprise, surprise, there's wagon parts that is being delivered there. What do you call the outside of a wheel?
A tire. These are tires.
Not that high. That's not that difficult, is it? Out of all these wagons, Eli, 300 or so, and then some, most likely. You've lost, I think you've lost count, right?
We've lost count.
Lost count.
We have.
What's your favorite wagon?
You know, this is one of my favorites. I can't say it's the very most favorite, but it's one of my favorites. And you know, it's even got my name on it, so it's got to be a favorite. But this wagon took me 15 years to get, and I had to outlive a man to get it. And when my wife was helping me push this into the shop to work on, it was in such bad shape it broke in half, the front wheels from the back. This wagon spent 18 months in the shop, rivet for rivet, screw for screw of what had been there originally. Tried to make it as historically accurate as possible. And I called the lady I got it from and I asked her if she had any pictures that maybe had writing on, or, you know, so that we could get the writing back on if there was any. And she said no, that she didn't know of any writing on it, but she said that it belonged to a company called Coal Transfer and Storage. And Coal Transfer and Storage was in Ogden, Utah. Well, my wife's grandfather lived in Ogden, lived there his whole life. He was in his 80s. This is many years ago. And I said, Grandpa, do you know anything about Coal Transfer and Storage? And he says, oh, yes, he says, that was owned by my uncle. And I used to drive for him, and they had 6 of these wagons. So, you know, here's my wife's grandfather's uncle that owned this wagon when it was new. Well, when they went to motorized vehicles, they sold it to a horse trader here in Tremont, and he was my mother's uncle. So this wagon has either been on my side of the family or my wife's side of the family since it was new.
Eli, that's the circle of life, I would say.
Isn't that neat?
That is, yeah.
This wagon back here is an international harvester wagon on a John Deere running gear. It's a California rack. They're very, very rare. And this is the only one in good original condition that I've ever seen. It's a wagon that means a lot to me because my father helped me come up with the money to buy that wagon about 6 months before he passed. This sheep camp is a 1913 sheep camp. It was made in Ogden, Utah. And it's the Home Comfort Camp. It belonged to my uncle. It was his very first sheep camp. And it's pretty neat to have a local piece of history like this. And if you look inside, you can see it's equipped with the feather tick. One of the hardest things to find on it was this coal oil can. And this coal oil can held the coal oil for the lamps. And it's in this rack that would tip. They had all the conveniences here.
I should say. Talk to us about how this headlamp would work.
You know, it's got a little reservoir in there that holds some oil and a little wick, and they would turn that wick up or down depending on how big the flame needed to be. And that's what they'd put out a little bit of light for them when they're going down the road. It's got a tail light red lens on the back. Most of them did. And that's what they used.
So what's amazing to me, Eli, is all the things that are in our culture now and we have no idea where they came from. They just are.
We don't know where they came from, and we're losing how they were made.
Well, and it's people like you that help to preserve that history, because if we lose where we came from, I think the future looks dim.
It does. You know, this kind of work is a lost art, and I haven't been able to find anybody that can tell me how this work was done. And we were missing a piece of this, and it took several years to find another piece off of another vehicle that wasn't going to be restored to be able to make this complete on this one.
And you got a story about every single one of these, don't you, Eli?
Well, there are stories. That orange top one belonged to Elvis Presley's agent.
Really? Doc Parker?
Yeah.
I'll be dipped. Look at that. So this was Elvis Presley's agent?
Uh-huh.
If you heard that, you probably heard it a lot more back then than you do today.
Yeah. And one of the neatest finds, a couple years ago, I found the lamps on it. And you can see the crossed fireman's axe on the side and the number 7.
Yeah.
And so wonderful to find the lamps that go with this piece. We finally found them just after 9/11. We had these things in the Days of 47 parade, and I put a great deal of effort into finding the lamps to equip onto the pieces so they'd be complete. You know, when I get a hold of these vehicles, I try to get the things that went with them so that, you know, we can get them back to their 100% stage.
You got 300 of these and then some. You've lost count, plus countless collections that refer to wagons and buggies and oxen and horses and so on. What have you learned out of all of this?
You know, I've learned that the people that built these are engineered. It's not something that was just thrown together. They used the right species of wood, the right sizes, dimensions, the steel along with the wood that made these wagons strong. And, you know, there's a lot of things on these wagons that, you know, we've lost the art. We don't know how they did some of the things they did. You know, there's a lot of it that is still kept alive, but some of the structural things and some of the unique wagons, we don't know how to really duplicate them. And so much of the mechanized machinery that we have in our factories is based off of technology learned from these wagons and the wheels.
If someone wanted to come out and see this amazing thing, how do they do that, Eli?
Well, they can give us a call, set up an appointment. My phone number is 435-279-6422.
And what's a website?
www.wagonlandadventure.com.
So that's the thing, is whatever your passion is, stick to it and make your life great on your long way home.